Today is Thursday, June 4th, and thank you once again for joining in to our weekly webinars. We do have a large agenda today, but we'll get through it rather quickly. And if you do have questions, as usual, if you want to type in your question in the question box, we'll answer them at the end together so that we all learn from each other. Or if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you and you can ask live so that, again, we can all benefit from each other's experiences. So without further ado, let's get started. In my next to the last bullet point, it says, how can I help you? Well, one of the responses was talk more about the group to individual transition. And, you know, this certainly was a very popular option really before PPACA back in 2012, 2013, and even in 14 it was pretty popular because the individual rates are substantially lower than the group rates. I mean, almost by 2/3 less expensive. So, of course, a lot of the employers of the small groups were struggling with their bottom line. You know, it's a difficult time economically. So we did see some transition from group to individual, not only in the small group market, but quite surprisingly, several large groups just dissolved coverage as well. Now, there's certain advantages to dropping group coverage and going to individual. Certainly, as mentioned, the individual coverage is less expensive most times for the consumers, in this case, the employees of the employer, and that would open up the option of getting the advanced premium tax credit subsidies through the marketplace for these employees. So there is an advantage there. And of course, they get to choose, the employees get to choose the plan that's appropriate to them, not just, you know, the several that are options from the employer. They can choose a plan that might be a catastrophic plan or, you know, a platinum plan, one that is reflective of what their needs are for insurance. Of course, maybe it was December of 13, the DOL put a squash on employers paying for individual premiums through HRAs or PRAs, which is a portion of the Section 125 flexible spending accounts. So it's gotten a lot more tricky. So the pitfalls are, of course, employers can't pay for the employees' individual health premiums. That's the ruling from the DOL, and it is strictly enforced. So employers can't get a tax break by not offering group coverage. Of course, group premiums are a business expense that can be written off by the employer. The only way for the employer to compensate or mitigate any damage, financial damage to their employees, is to increase the payroll, which of course increases the taxable income for the employee and the payroll taxes for the employer. And the employer really, by going from group to individual, has no control over the employees actually getting insurance. If they raise their salaries according to the law, the employers can't say, well, I'm going to raise your salary, but you have to go get insurance and prove it to me. It can't be tied to insurance. So the employer loses that control over the employees actually obtaining coverage. I do see that the pricing is going to be increasing the closer we get to 2017, so it may become a less popular option. And of course, a lot of the groups with the grandmothering provisions, the ability to keep their non-PPACA plans, you know, that's a concern too. That's a pitfall. At this point, with the volatility in all of these pending decisions and increasing premiums, you know, I don't know that taking their grandmothered provision and dissolving coverage for an individual option, or even going from a non-PPACA plan to a PPACA group plan, would actually be beneficial. So, I mean, those are certainly some of the pitfalls. For the 50-plus groups, if they drop coverage, then they are subject to the employer mandate penalties. If if they drop coverage that was in place as of February 9th of 2014 and they're 50 or more full-time eligibles, then that employer is subject to the employer mandate if those employees go to the exchange and get coverage. So definitely some pitfalls. If you want to talk more about it one-on-one, certainly give me a call. But you know, it's very attractive right now, and you know, certainly we used to endorse this sort of behavior prior to the DOL issuing the statements that we can't use HRA or PRA funds to pay. So, you know, again, it is an option, and I'm not saying that it's a terrible option for every group, but it is an option for the appropriate groups. Just be mindful of the pitfalls. So enough of that. There is a direct store update. Last week we talked a little bit about direct store options for Highmark, that they are going to be opening up their direct stores for agents that are certified to sell on the FFM for 2016, and also those certified to sell the Medicare Advantage plans and Medicare Supplement plans. So there is an opportunity for the enrollment period to work in the direct stores. If you have any interest in doing so, then just shoot me an email or give me a call and I'll put you on the list. We don't have any details about what that actually will entail as far as training. We do understand there is a session that you would have to attend and the ethics training in order to qualify for selling in the stores. I don't have that information yet, but again, I'm just gathering names for those that are interested in working in the stores, both in the Harrisburg area and the Lehigh Valley area. So the next bullet point, Governor Wolf and the state-supported, I'm trying to think what this stands for, this acronym, and I can't, this supported state-based marketplace. Yeah, what this industry needs is yet another acronym, right? So Governor Wolf, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago, did write out to HHS with the intention of working on a state-based exchange for 2016. That is a huge feat that with our timeline probably won't happen, but the intent is there to eventually move to that system. The letter that just came out a couple days ago to HHS basically said that for 2016, it appears that we may work on this state-supported benefits, supported state-based marketplace. Goodness gracious, I'm never going to get that right. And essentially what that means is that we would lease healthcare.gov, that portal, as a state, but the state would then take over and retain control over the plan designs, the oversight of the enrollers, and have a little bit more skin in the game, if you will, and the ability to hopefully get some of these changes that need to be done through. So what will happen, I don't know. It is something that has a cost associated with it, and that still has to make it through the appropriations of our Republican-led House and Senate at the state level. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I certainly don't know what the decision for King versus Burwell would be with the tax subsidies being available to the FFM states. But, you know, again, it's just more change coming down the pike, and we've all learned to certainly adapt and turn on a dime. So it's just another way that we're going to have to do that. I will certainly keep watching this and give you any information that I have so that we can all be better prepared when the marketplace opens 11/1. A lot of you saw this announcement. It will be in my newsletter that's coming out. And as we know, Highmark and NEPA entered an agreement to work more closely together, which really meant acquisition. And the state has approved Highmark's purchase of Blue Cross of Northeastern PA. So Blue Cross of Northeastern PA is now Highmark Blue Shield of Northeastern PA. There's not a lot more information that I can share on that other than I have reached out to them, and for 2016 it does appear that they will still operate somewhat separately as far as the plan designs. We don't expect there to be a lot of changes to the NEPA product portfolio, both on the individual and group side. And what they told me is that later this summer they will be able to divulge more information. So at this point, I don't know anything other than NEPA plans will probably remain very similar. Highmark plans will probably remain very similar, separate territories for 2016. But, you know, as far as commissions or submission or any change in contracting, those things I don't know yet. But I will, again, let you know what I know when I find it out. The Navigator Bill did pass through the House. This is a Payhu-led initiative, and it did pass the House. And what this does is it would require unlicensed Affordable Care Act navigators and certified application counselors to register with the Pennsylvania Insurance Department and undergo individual background checks. It does have to pass the Senate yet. They don't think that that will be an issue, but certainly this is one step, a good get for us that are licensed and have done our CEs and our training and our background checks, so that the navigators are subject to the same background checks that we are to protect consumers, because otherwise it's pretty dangerous with all the sensitive information. So that's a good get. That is Senate Bill 293. So that is going to the Senate in our state. Hopefully that will pass. You know, we get a lot of questions about the subsidies, and certainly having that crystal ball trying to accurately predict 2015 income for individual plans on healthcare.gov. You know, there were a lot of pitfalls this year with discrepancies. If it wasn't, you know, within a certain amount of dollars, the marketplace looked at that as a discrepancy in income and stopped the subsidies. The insureds had to call back in and give updated information. So it was a real nightmare. I don't expect that process to change, but you know, there was Value Penguin had some articles out about the payback schedule for unwarranted or unearned subsidies, and based on your percentage of the federal poverty level, there was a payback schedule both for individual and as a family. That doesn't take away from being fraudulent when you enter this information, and there is a penalty for just going in there and entering something that was, you know, so off in income that it becomes fraudulent. So an article was shared by one of our agent partners, and it says people who apply for coverage on the exchanges may face perjury charges for submitting false information. Negligence violations carry a $25,000 fine. Willful violations come with a $250,000 penalty. And ineligible people who get tax credits will have to pay them back when they file their taxes the following year. So there is a real danger for you know, anyone out there that's trying to work the system. I'm not implying that any of, you know, my agent partners are doing that. I'm just saying be mindful, because, you know, the penalty that large is pretty drastic. So the next bullet point, I again mentioned the exciting things coming your way. You're going to be getting more information, but we have signed an agreement with Benefits Connect to offer this to our agents as a service, and that service includes a lot of good options. We're also looking for some newsletter content that you would actually be able to share with your consumers and possibly co-brand, pardon me, with your logo. And one of the most exciting things for those that work now in the 100+ market or next year in the 50+ market is it does have an ACA management tool, which would track the measurement periods for all these variable hour employees. So these are all things that we're going to be rolling out. Our ETA is when we move into our new building, which is in the beginning of September. So I think you're really going to be excited, as we are, about the package that we're going to be putting out for our group health partners. So keep watching for that information. I mentioned last week about the FFM training site, the marketplace.medicarelearningnetworklms.com. This is where we all have gone to do our certification for selling on the FFM. They are pooling all the information from 14 and 15 off of that site to prepare for the 2016 testing. If you did not register to do your training for 15 by June 1st, then it's actually too late, but everything will be pooled, including your training certificate, certification that you actually completed 14 and 15. So I would encourage you to get on that site, not only to pool those certificates if you haven't already housed those, but it's certainly never too early to verify that your username and password still work, because we will have to be going back into the site to do training in a couple short months for 2016. So I encourage you to just go in and test your username and password so that you're better prepared and you don't have to scramble at the last minute. Last bullet point is, again, how can I help you? Let me know what you want to learn more about. Again, I'm always happy to pull in resources, people in the know, to help you with any topic, or do some research and help you, myself. Again, I've always said we sink or swim together. So the more knowledge we have as a group, the better prepared we will be to tackle this crazy industry, and also, certainly flourish in it. So I encourage you to let me know how I can help you. So that's it. That brings us up to our open forum and any questions that you may have. It does look like we have a couple, and I appreciate that. Just as a reminder for housekeeping, as you're typing in any other questions that you would have, is the next webinar is next Thursday, which is June 11th, and hopefully you can join in. And David says, when will the grandmothering of non-ACA end? And David, that is on October of 2017. The president allowed for the grandmothering provisions, which is, if you like your plan, you can keep your plan. That's the grandmothering provision. And they allowed states to decide and individual carriers to decide how they will accept that. Some carriers are grandmothering for the full 2017, up to 10 of 2017, and some carriers basically said, nope, we're not grandmothering. So it lasts by law until October 2017. It doesn't necessarily mean it will last until then, though, for some carriers. Jay says, great job, Kehu, and I would agree with that. And, certainly, applaud the efforts, because goodness gracious, all these people out there with no background checks and all this sensitive information, it's pretty scary. And David says, well, Dina says it was her that shared it, and it absolutely was, Dina, and I appreciate that information. So David says, how will these penalties apply to agents? And they won't, David. I'm just letting you know to be mindful that when you are putting in information for your clients, either on healthcare.gov or any of the portals that do the redirect to healthcare.gov, you really want to be mindful that what your clients are telling you is accurate. Some agents have asked their clients to bring in their tax returns. Whether that is actually accurate or not, I don't know, but bottom line, it is the client's responsibility to divulge the correct information, and if you're entering it, then I would say just have the client sign off on the income so that it's not a he said, she said situation. But those penalties for perjury would not apply, or fraudulence would not apply to you. Tim says, has the shop option for small groups become more viable? The last time I looked at this plan, the choices were limited and the tax advantages were not clear. It is still viable. It's more difficult this year because it is a totally online situation where you have to go to healthcare.gov. You as an agent have to be registered. The employer has to create an account, and then each employee has to go in and create an account. For Pennsylvania, it's still one carrier and essentially, one plan, and that doesn't give the groups a lot of freedom. And the tax penalties, the tax advantages, the tax credit, yeah, there are some groups that could benefit from the up to 50% tax credit, but what we have found for the smaller groups is it kind of, the tax credit is great, but any amount of money, the premium that you're looking at to gain that tax credit is actually taken from the entire premium, which is an employer write-off. So, one could argue that the tax credit that they get on one hand may increase the employer's taxable income because of the amount, the reduced amount being applied towards the business write-off. I know it gets crazy. I know more than I need to know, or maybe I'm just dangerous with that information, but it does work for some groups, bottom line, but not all. Kim says, do you have a date that the 2016 FFM certification will be available online? I don't, Kim. I can tell you the last 2 years it's come out about the first week in August. So that's kind of the timeline that I'm thinking that it's going to come out, but I've not heard anything one way or the other. And David says, can you address the pros and cons of self-insured groups sometime? Yeah, absolutely, David. I can actually bring in Christy maybe next week, or can talk a little bit about that. And he also says, also on SHOP, they won't give credits for owners or family members. That's a good point, David, that they're not going to get that tax credit for that portion of their premium. So another pitfall of the SHOP, if you will. Looks like I have a hand raised, so let me get to the hands. And nope, it looks like it was raised for 33 minutes, so it might be at the beginning. So that pretty much brings us up to the end of our questions. I appreciate all of you joining in every week and hope to continue these as long as we have a lot to share. And I would say that's not going to slow up anytime soon. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of the week, a great day, and certainly a great weekend. Bye-bye.